Let's move on to talking about what's going on in the culture. We are going to be fact checking Donald Trump, or rather, sharing some content that does a good job of fact checking Donald Trump and bringing it to life, which is kind of what we do. So I'll share a bit from Time Magazine. President Donald Trump has said he is preparing an executive order to get rid of mail-in ballots and voting machines before the 2026 midterm elections, and he's spreading misinformation on social media about the voting methods ahead of time. During a meeting with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky in the White House, Trump criticized mail-in ballots as corrupt and undemocratic. Quote, mail-in ballots are corrupt. You can never have a real democracy with mail-in ballots, unquote, Trump said, adding that lawyers are always drafting the executive order. Already drafting the executive order. Quote, it is the only way Democrats can get elected, unquote. Earlier in the day, Trump posted a similar message on Truth Social, pledging to lead a movement to eliminate mail-in ballots and highly inaccurate voting machines. Quote, we are now the only country in the world that uses mail-in voting. All others gave it up because of the massive voter fraud encountered, unquote, he wrote. Absentee voting and vote by mail allowed people to send in their ballots via the Postal Service. Not all states allow it, but the laws vary in each state that does. Some states permit universal mail-in voting, for example, where anyone can vote by mail for any reasons. Others allow it in specific circumstances. Despite what Trump claims, the United States is not the only country that uses mail-in ballots. The International Institute for Democracy and Electoral Assistance, the IDEA, an intergovernmental organization that works to protect democratic institutions, says that 34 countries allow voting, 12 of which allow it for all voters, and 22 of which allow it for some voters. Among the countries that allow it are Canada, the United Kingdom, Australia, and Germany. So that's a great way to kick that off. Donald Trump is sowing additional fear and division by suggesting that mail-in ballots are undemocratic, and it's the only way that Democrats can win. But indeed, every single Republican candidate that ever won, did so with the same framework that exists right now. But I think when your voter base is kind of primed, they've been taught to hate half of the country. And based on really nothing, like we could look at a lot of things that are done by Democratic leadership that's actually harmful, that has real world implications. We have long historical data, et cetera, that says these policies are corrupt. You could have an argument about the moral fabric of society all day, because that's kind of a little bit more subjective. But what is objective is dollars and cents and incarceration rates and all that sort of stuff. It doesn't seem like Republicans are winning a lot of those battles. But again, when you've been primed to hate the opposition, then disenfranchising the opposition feels like exactly what you wanted to hear. So you just kind of accept stuff like this on its face, that this is the only way Democrats can win, and ignore the fact that every Republican won the same way. And that somehow this is undemocratic just because he says it. Your thoughts?
Cutting off your nose to spite your face. Let's own the libs, even if we own ourselves. Because, of course, Republican voters vote by mail. Everyone does. And as you said, more than 2/3 of democracies around the world use some form of mail-in voting. So the idea that it's not democratic, or that only we do it, or that it's corrupt in nature, coming from someone who votes by mail, by the way, people just ignore that the first time he started having a conversation about mail-in ballots being wrong, in that election, he voted by mail. So Trump be lying, but more importantly, his base allows it. They will go with whatever he says, and you will watch them do mental gymnastics to justify whatever he says, even when it's blatantly corrupt or blatantly false. If it's provable, if the data and all the facts show that it's false, they'll say he didn't mean it. If it's just corrupt, they'll find a way to align themselves with the corruption.
Yeah.
right? It doesn't matter how low he goes, he's still the best choice for America. So it doesn't matter. Yes, if he did that to his daughter, or if he did this to someone else and it was harmful, or if whatever the crime is, yes, I'd still support him because he's God's choice for America. It's a really, really sad state, but it's also a really true one.
Also, want to add one more thing here. A lot of the military votes by mail, especially people who are deployed overseas. So it's kind of part and parcel to the whole. Everybody gets a chance to have a voice in their government.
Well, the more people that have a voice, the less likely he is to win. So
there it is.
You don't want everybody to have a voice.
Yeah. Well, this is why in Texas they are gerrymandering the maps, because they recognize that they lose power when it's organized the way that it should be, and everyone gets a fairer say. All right, let's move on to another thing. That this one will be pretty brief, but this comes from CNN. The wall along the southern border will be painted black in an effort to make the structure too hot to climb. Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem announced Tuesday, saying the suggestion came from President Donald Trump. Quote, "It's tall, which makes it very, very difficult to climb, almost impossible. It also goes deep into the ground, which would make it very difficult, if not impossible, to dig under. And today, we are also going to be painting it black," unquote, Noem said during a news conference Tuesday in Santa Teresa, New Mexico, as she stood before the slatted steel structure. Quote, "That is specifically at the request of the president, who understands that in the hot temperatures down here, when something is painted black, it gets even warmer, and it will make it even harder for people to climb," unquote, she said. Do you want to just tell the people the most obvious things about this, Q?
So there's a couple of things.
Go ahead.
First and foremost, we don't live in eternal summer in this country. There's these things called seasons.
Yeah.
We also, unlike, our neighbors to the extreme north, don't live in 24-hour sunlight. The sun sets every day.
And that's when people
you think this takes me back to when he proposed injecting bleach to treat the coronavirus. It's like you think that when he says some of these ridiculous things, like there's no way there are no educated Republicans.
Yeah.
Imagine being so married to evil and corruption that you don't even speak up when he says and does ridiculously unintelligent things, man. Like, yeah, let's just paint it black. Then it'll be too hot for them to climb. I'm sorry, man. Some of the stuff that he says and does is just too ridiculous to even try to form an educated response to.
I know what you mean. Well, the other thing is that how can it also be true that nobody's coming over and that this wall is necessary? How much extra does it cost to paint it black? Who crosses the border in the daytime when you're most likely to be seen?
And it's crossed since he got elected anyway. So what are we doing?
Yeah, you know what I'm saying?
Like him.
But the other part is, if you're going to climb a wall, you're not going to touch the wall. You're going to get a ladder. So you don't have to, there's so many parts of this that feel just like he's just saying whatever. And people are like, yeah, that's but like, it's not based in any real meaningful, impactful version of reality that changes anything. So, but that's their God. All right, let's move on to the last one. This one will be brief, but Donald Trump is, of course, teasing the idea of no more elections. As from the BIN, President Donald Trump is again hinting at finding a loophole to serve a third presidential term. During a White House summit on Monday, August 18th, Trump appeared at a joint press conference with several European leaders, including Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, who noted that his country couldn't safely hold elections amid its conflict with Russia per people. Trump used the moment to suggest that he could suspend the 2028 presidential election if the U.S. were engaged in a war at that time. Quote, "So let me just say, 3.5 years from now, if we happen to be in a war with somebody, no more elections. Oh, that's good," unquote, the president joked. So, that's him further priming the pump and giving his base what they want and what a lot of people seem to not mind, I guess. We mind.